This is the finished cover for my Airthreader 2000D, and this is what it looks like on the inside. You can see the opening where I can pick up my machine. One of the hardest things to work out if you're trying to make a cover for one of these is how big the circumference is, because there are knobs and bits and bobs all over the sides and the back, all of which push out from the machine. I found this cover that I already had, and I'm not sure if it's the one that came with the machine because I found two, and it sort of works. It's not too bad at all, except that the tray is not on there, and when I put it on, the cover no longer really fits. So what I really need is for the whole cover to be a bit bigger than this one. So having done the maths, this is what I have worked out for the side of the Airthreader 2000. I started out with a rectangle, 29 centimetres or 11 3/8 inches wide, and 29.5 centimetres tall or 11.5 inches tall. So this corner, and that one are all right angles, 90 degrees. This piece here, 9.5 centimetres or 3 3/4 inches, and the one at the top, 13 centimetres or 5 1/8 inches. And that should mean that this piece that's cut off is 25.5 centimetres or 10 1/8 inches. Once you've got the basic shape, measure around that edge. If it does not match the length from the front to the back of the panels you've made that go across your machine, change the length. So if you needed an extra inch, add 1/2 inch at the bottom, and that will give you 1/2 inch at the front, 1/2 inch at the back. That's the whole inch that you need to go around the edge. Conversely, if you need to take some off, divide in half how much you need to take off and cut off a strip at the bottom, and that will make it match. Much easier to do that than to try to fiddle around with the shape. And that's why I've got this little piece here at the bottom, because it was a little tiny bit too short. So it was easier to add that bit at the bottom to make it work than to try and change the angle. If you're making a garment, then you need a left side and a right side. And the way that we get around doing that when we're cutting something out is by cutting out the pattern with the right sides of the fabric together. When you open them out, you've got one each way. We need to do that with the side panels as well, because you really do not want two panels for the right side or two panels for the left side. I've got two panels, one for the left side, one for the right side, whichever way, doesn't matter. But I have to make sure I get one that goes in that direction and one that goes in that direction. It will not work if I have two going in the same direction. And that means putting my side panels right sides together. My front and back panels have got these on, these sashing pieces, and I want them to match up. So I'm going to put my pattern down here at the bottom so that that bottom edge will match up with my front and back panels. I personally have decided I will have the sashing towards the back of the side panels, and I'm not worried about what happens over here. Once you've got your side panels cut out, it is easier to change the entire size of the entire cover by making the front back strip narrower. So if the whole thing's a bit big, take a little bit off either side rather than trying to do anything to the side panels. So these are the two pieces that I cut off. In retrospect, I didn't need to make nearly as much sashing as I did, but I didn't know that at the time. And that's part of the process of working something out that you don't have a pattern for. Having trimmed off along the top, the diagonal and the side, I now need to stitch my backing in place again. So that will just be a straight stitch around those edges on both. I have moved my needle to the far right and increased my stitch length to 2.8, and I'm just stitching around these edges to keep the backing fabric and the top together. That will be the front edge of this panel. That will be the diagonal. And that will be the top. Now I'm going to go to Zigzag, and I'm going to make this no wider than it already is, but as long as I can, because I may need to unpick this. Because I'm not 100% sure about how big this whole thing needs to be around, it may potentially be too big how I've cut it now. And the easiest way for me to adjust that will be by making the front panel narrower. So I'm making this a very big zigzag in order that it's going to be easy for me to get out if I need to make those panels smaller. And what a great prophecy that ended up being. I had to take it undone because I had sewn it into the wrong side. If you're doing something like this, make sure that you mark it in a way that you know what's the bottom, what's the bit that shouldn't be attached to that front to back panel, and do better than I did. I'm going to start at the bottom. I have put a pin to make sure that I've got the top. So I'm putting the two sides, or the back of the side panel against the side of the back front panel. As I go up, I need to make sure these joins are together. It is easiest to start on the back because these panels, the sashings, should all match. When you get to the corner, it's probably best to have your needle in on the left or on the straight side. Lift the foot and start bringing the side panel into it. If you're lucky, you may get these ones to match up as well. Each time you've got a corner, put your needle down in the straight one, lift the foot and bring it forward. You don't actually have to get very far past the corner, and it's all very easy to get together. This side doesn't have to match. And finally we're going to bring that in. Now that's a bit big, but I should be able to wiggle it. Now there's that wiggly bit that I just did. That's going to have tape go over it, so it should all work out. If I had locked off that zigzag as I ought to have at the end of the seams, it would have stopped it from trying to pull apart when I was putting the tape over it. Would have made my life a bit easier. I zigzagged both sides together and checked that it actually fit the machine. Having done that, I just went back and started putting the tape on things. Put myself onto a straight stitch, adjust it so it's a little bit, so it's a bit longer. I want, as I'm stitching, to be sewing it onto the straight one, which in this case is the left. So I need to move this over to the left, and I'm going to have it on 1.0. And that means that I'm 1 millimetre away from as far left as it can be. You can see because I only did big zigzag that it's pulling apart at the beginning there. I'm not worried about that. This tape is actually going to hold it together. So I'm stitching on the front and back panel first. And you can see where it's a bit gathered up on the side panel. That doesn't matter, it's going to get covered. All I'm worried about at the moment is covering up that stitching on the left. When you've got a nice big thing like this, it's actually not that hard to work inside it. This is where there's a bend. I'm going to come up to the bend, lift the foot, adjust myself, and carry on. Now, this is going to be one of the big bends, the 90-degree ones. Lift the foot, readjust, and start heading down. And you can see here it is also pulling apart a bit, but this fabric, this tape that I'm putting on now, will hold that together. I'm going to go back to the beginning, move the needle over to the right, now before I start sewing I need to make sure that that bit that I was a little bit open is pushed fair together. Now because one side is a bit shorter than the other, there's a bit of massaging going on now. And here is where the big 90-degree turn was. So I'm going to sew into it and then stop and come back out and do a little tuck. So that's about as far as I can get into it. I need to lift the needle and adjust this fabric in the tape so that it's flat, and then I can carry on with the next bit. It may not be perfect, but it's not going to be far off. Once again, as I get down here to the bottom, I need to make sure that those two parts of it are together. So there's the inside where I've laid that tape. If I really wanted to, I could do a few little hand stitches there to stitch it down. And I need to make sure that I'm doing the front back panels first. So I'm now starting off at the end where I finished last time. Back to do the right side. And after doing the other side, the only thing left to do was to bind the bottom edge, which is exactly the same as binding a quilt, except there are no corners. Woohoo! Here is my Janome 2000D Airthreader, and this is its lovely new Quilt As You Go cover. I'm really pleased with how this turned out, although I now have to make one for my Baby Lock Evolution and my Janome 644D. But that's part of the fun, isn't it? I'll see you next time.